In 2013, Du Bin, a Chinese filmmaker, was arrested and imprisoned. He was released recently. He wasn't charged with any normal crime. He was arrested for reporting on Falun Gong, a banned religious organization in China. China has the world's largest population, yet the government can maintain control extremely well. The government manages to operate extremely efficiently while managing large amounts of people and resources. The government does this by maintaining solidarity throughout its population and by suppressing dissent. One way it does this is through the suppression of the right to freedom of religion. By decreasing the number of religious practitioners throughout the country, the Chinese government hoped to decrease loyalty to religious figures and increase loyalty to the state. Ever since the beginning of our country, we valued our right to our religious freedom. It's likely that people in other places around the world value their religions too. However, not everyone has the right to freely practice their religions. In China, the world's most populated country, citizens are restricted in the way they practice. During the mid-1900s, the right to freedom of religion was not well protected in China. Because previous rebellions in China were often religion-inspired, the communist government was afraid that religious practitioners might lead a rebellion. As a result, Mao Zedong's Red Guards, a group of revolutionary students, destroyed religious artifacts such as temples, and laws banning religion were passed. Although religious artifacts such as temples were destroyed, families continued to practice their religion secretly. This meant that the efforts to increase loyalty to the state through banning religion most likely failed. However, during the late 1900s, bans on religious practices were lifted as China implemented a more capitalist economy. Currently, the Constitution guarantees religious freedom and says that the government can't discourage someone from taking part in a religious group or joining a religious group. However, Chinese laws require religious organizations to register, and the government is allowed to appoint religious leaders. Religious organizations also can't be associated with someone outside the country. For example, Catholics can't be associated with the Pope. The Constitution also doesn't protect the right to religious practice. Unapproved religious groups are banned from practicing their religion. As a result, the Chinese government has the ability to randomly declare a group unapproved and ban their religious practice. Although there is a degree of religious freedom present, it's not comparable with true religious freedom. Also, the number of religious followers in China is growing. That means that religious freedom is most likely improving. Still, a degree of limited religious freedom is in no way comparable to what Chinese citizens could have with no limits on religious freedom at all. This would lead to happier citizens, as well as improved relations with other countries. It would improve China's standing in the world, making it easier to negotiate for other human rights in China. The implementation of these changes is extremely important. From inside China, citizens could protest against restrictions on religion in order to bring more attention to it. The communist government often cracks down on protests and arrests protesters. This would bring attention to religious freedom in China from outside the country. Another important aspect of change in China would be the appointment of a more open, more liberal leader. This would make it easier to change laws, and it would make it more likely that religious freedom would actually be enforced. However, not everything can be changed from only internal action. To complement action inside China, international groups might have to do something too. Tactics used internationally to improve human rights in other countries have included sanctions and boycotts. For example, the effect of sanctions on Iran led to the negotiation over its nuclear program. However, China is a major trading partner of the US, along with many other countries. While imposing sanctions on China would hurt China and might force them to change, it would also hurt our countries and other countries as well. Over 1/4 of our imported goods are made in China. Because of the number of goods we wouldn't be able to import, we would have to develop our manufacturing capabilities as to offset the number of goods imported from China. This is an expensive and slow process. Sanctions would hurt China, but would also end up hurting our economy as well. The most likely way of increasing religious freedom in China is through bargaining by outside countries and organizations. For example, the Olympic Committee agreed to host the 2008 Olympics in Beijing if China agreed to improve its human rights conditions. In order to improve international views of China, Beijing agreed. This makes it easier to improve human rights in China. This means that if we were to bargain with China, allowing them to host large, major events, China would agree and China would improve its human rights conditions. This would improve life for everyone in China. This would allow for the citizens of China to practice freely and openly, while improving China's international standing. If successful, it would also provide an example of how to improve human rights in other countries around the globe. It's imperative that we act now in order to secure freedom of religion for Chinese citizens. This would bring countless benefits to them, and it would provide a model for improving human rights in other areas of the globe. This is an opportunity too good to miss. We must act now in order to improve rights in China. Yay!